Fortnite is one of those games where mechanics alone aren't enough. You can have the fastest edits, the smoothest movement, even the cleanest aim, but if your game sense isn't there, you'll always hit a wall. Today, I'm going to break down the core concepts that actually raise your IQ in fights. Things like playing reactive and proactive at the right times, knowing when to create space, predicting the unpredictable, and sharpening the instincts that separate casual players from actual competitors. By the end of this video, your decisions will feel clearer, smoother, and more confident than ever. So make sure you guys stick around as the last section is very important. Let's get right into it. Section number 1. Playing reactive versus proactive. Understanding when to be reactive and when to be proactive is one of the deepest layers of Fortnite IQ, and most players completely misunderstand it. When you play reactively, you're not being passive or scared. You're gathering information. You're observing how your opponent moves, how they take angles, how they edit, what weapons they rely on, and what kind of pace they like to fight at. Many players don't realize that they have patterns, but when you're in reactive mode, you start catching those patterns almost instantly. You notice if someone always goes for a left-hand peek, or if they always crouch before editing, or if they try to pre-fire your wall after 3 pickaxe swings. You learn how they think just by watching them for a few seconds. This is what lets you win fights even against players who may be mechanically stronger than you. Playing reactive is especially useful in tight, high-stress situations like box fights or close-range engagements where every micro decision matters. In these situations, if you rush too fast, you're basically giving your opponent free opportunities to punish you. But when you stay calm and reactive, you're forcing them to commit first. You catch their timing, you catch their hesitation, you catch the tiny mistakes they don't even realize they're making. That's what turns you into the type of player who wins trades, wins edits, and wins fights, without relying on flashy mechanical skill. On the other hand, being proactive is about taking control when you have the actual advantage. It's about dictating the pace and forcing your opponents into uncomfortable situations. When you play proactively, you're not waiting to see what they'll do. You're creating the situation before they even think about it. You take space fast, you pressure walls, you hit edits with confidence, you create windows where you control every outcome. Proactive play shines when you're fighting weaker players, when you're stacked on mats and weapons, or when you have momentum in the fight and you want to close it out quickly before other teams or players show up. A lot of players lose easy fights because they hesitate when they should push forward. They slow down when they actually need to go faster. This flip between speed is what creates mistakes. The key is dynamic switching, changing from reactive to proactive and back again depending on the different types of situations. The best players in the world don't stick to one style. They constantly switch. If they see an opening, they act instantly. If they sense danger, they slow down. If their opponent is nervous, they speed up. If their opponent is confident, they wait. This switching is what makes players like Seti, Miro, or Malabuka feel unpredictable and impossible to fight, because they never stick to one rhythm. Once you master this concept, you'll notice fights feel way more in your control. You won't feel stuck, you won't feel confused, you won't feel like fights rely on luck or mechanics. You'll feel like every engagement is following your plan, even when you're reacting. Alright, section 2. Knowing when to create space. Most players underestimate how powerful creating space really is. They think backing up means they're losing the fight or running away, but in reality, creating space is one of the smartest decisions you can make. When you're too close to an opponent, you don't have time to think, you don't have room to reposition, you don't have angles to work with. You're stuck defending walls, predicting edits, and reacting to pressure that keeps coming faster and faster. This is when panic kicks in. This is when players start making desperate plays. This is when everything for you falls apart. But the moment you create space, even a single tile, everything changes. Suddenly the fight slows down. You can place safer builds. You can heal without being instantly punished. You can reset the situation on your own terms instead of your opponent's. Creating space gives you time, and time is one of the most powerful resources in Fortnite. Time lets you think, time lets you hear, time lets you plan your next move instead of reacting blindly. Space also gives you information. When you step back, you can see your opponent's movement more clearly. You can hear where they're going, you can anticipate whether you're trying to flank, drop down, climb up, or break through. You're no longer caught inside your own box and reacting to almost instant pressure without visibility. You're now in a position where you can read the fight and be proactive. That's why pros always create space even when they're dominating a fight. They know that spacing creates clarity and clarity creates control. This concept becomes even more important in ranked or battle royale matches because the terrain is always different. Creating space lets you reposition to higher ground, safer angles, and stronger structures. It lets you prepare yourself for third parties instead of being surprised by them. It helps you avoid being trapped, cornered, or funneled into predictable angles. Sometimes the smartest players in the world win fights not because they hit harder shots, but because they create just enough space to make the fight theirs. Once you learn when your brain is starting to overload, that's when you step back, breathe, and take control again. But real quick before we jump into the next part, I need to talk about something that actually made my game feel way better. Risen's Tweaks. It's a performance optimization tool designed specifically for players who are tired of lag spikes, low FPS, and delay ruining their fights. It fixes all of that by optimizing your setup so your game feels smoother, faster, and way more responsive. I've been using it for a while now, and the difference is instant. Building feels cleaner, edits feel more connected, and fights feel like they're actually reacting to your inputs instead of delaying everything. If you want the same boost, use code FLOW at checkout for 15% off, or just click the link in the description. Don't let lag hold you back, get Risen's tweaks today, and play at your full potential. Alright, Section 3. The more you play, the better these instincts become. Gamesense doesn't come from tutorials like this one. It doesn't come from watching montages. It doesn't come from a single video. Gamesense comes from exposure, experience, and doing things over and over until your brain automatically understands them. Every fight you take teaches you something, even if you never consciously analyze it. Your brain picks up patterns, timings, and tendencies without you even realizing it. Pros are literal gods in this sense because they have thousands of these same exact things happen to them in multiple different matches, so they know how to react to them instantly. And you guys need to have that happen to you too. For example, after fighting hundreds of players, you start recognizing the rhythm of edits. You begin to sense when someone is about to pre-fire. You feel when someone is baiting you instead of actually opening a window. You develop an instinct for how fast certain players move, and that instinct helps you read the next move before it even happens. None of that comes from thinking hard, it comes from repetition. The more you expose yourself to fight variations, the faster you build this intuition. A lot of players get stuck because they avoid fights or they only take fights that they think they can win. They don't want to experience discomfort, confusion, or chaos. But those chaotic moments are the exact situations that build real IQ. When you force yourself to take more fights, you accelerate your learning growth. You get better at understanding pressure, close range pacing, panic moments, reload timings, and how players behave when they're winning or losing. You learn how to stay calm when you hear multiple footsteps, how to choose between pushing or resetting, how to play when you're low on mats, how to position when you're one shot. These experiences shape your instincts more than anything else. And if you feel like your game sense isn't improving fast enough, you're not stuck, you're just early in the process. Every player who's great at reading fights went through the same phase as you are. They weren't born with game sense. They built it by repeatedly exposing themselves to uncomfortable situations until those situations became normal. When you stop avoiding fights and stop protecting your ego, your IQ actually skyrockets. Every session becomes a chance to stack hundreds of micro lessons that your brain stores for future fights. Over time, you stop thinking and start feeling the right decisions, and that's when everything starts clicking. Alright, Section 4. How to predict the unpredictable. Predicting the unpredictable is the highest form of game sense because it takes all of the ideas you've learned and lets you apply them instantly. The truth is that even the wildest, most chaotic players still follow patterns. They just don't realize it. A player who plays randomly isn't actually random. They're predictable in a different way. Their unpredictability becomes predictable because you can read their intentions through their behavior. A player who rushes every fight will always rush again. A player who tries random edits will always try them again. A player who wastes mats quickly will always expose themselves when they panic. When you learn to identify these tendencies, you can see openings before they actually happen. Remember, being proactive. For example, highly aggressive players almost always widen their edits more than they should. They overextend because they want fast kills. They expose more of their body because they want to force the fight. Once you recognize that tendency, you can set up easy pre-fires and punish windows. You know they're coming in too hot, so you can use their momentum against them. Players who play slowly have their own patterns too. They delay edits, they wait for you to make the first move, they crouch walk to try to stay quiet, and they repeat the same safe habits. Once you recognize defensive plays, you know they're unlikely to push, so take more space and pressure them into making mistakes. Predicting these tendencies is not about reading minds, it's about reading habits. When fights escalate, unpredictability becomes easier to see. Under pressure, players reveal their true patterns. Some panic and crank height, some panic and box up, some panic and full spray, some panic and run in a straight line. The more you played, the easier it becomes to recognize these behaviors. You start predicting that the player low on mats will panic double edit. You predict that someone who is desperate for a kill will over peek. You predict that a confident player will swing the same side again. The fight feels like you're playing chess while the opponent is playing checkers. The biggest mistake players make is assuming unpredictability is a disadvantage for them. In reality, it's an advantage because unpredictable players expose more mistakes. They play sloppier, they commit harder, they leave more openings. You just have to train your brain to watch their patterns instead of panicking. Once you understand that even random players are predictable in their own way, your IQ jumps to a whole different level. If you made it to the end, you're already ahead of most players because you're actually trying to understand the game on a deeper level. Keep practicing, keep learning, and your game sense will improve faster than you think. If you want more videos like this, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment what you want next. Thanks for watching. I love you all. You guys have a great rest of your guys' day. Go check out Risen's tweaks, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.